capital of Uzbekistan, there is one of the largest collections of Muslim manuscripts on the planet. It's listed in the UNESCO Memory of the World Register and today numbers 26,000 manuscripts and 39,000 ancient lithographic books in Arabic script. This legendary library, which by its richness of content can be easily called a genuine book cave of Aladdin, is nothing more than a collection of manuscripts of Institute of Oriental Studies named after Abu Rayhan Biruni, a department of the Academy of Sciences of Uzbekistan founded in 1943. However, it has to be said that the beginning of the outstanding collection of the manuscripts of Uzbekistan was laid much earlier by the famous bibliophiles of Central Asia.
Фонд рукописи Института Востоковедения располагает несколькими
The Manuscript Fund of the Institute of Oriental Studies has several thematic collections, one of which is composed from more than 2,000 manuscripts for the exact and natural sciences. Thematically, they cover mathematics, astronomy, medicine, geography, alchemy, numerology, and also there are several copies of the essays on veterinary medicine and hunting. Chronologically, they cover the compositions from the period of 9th to the beginning of the 20th century. They have been rewritten and the manuscripts of the 13th to 20th centuries have reached us. The scientific collection of our foundation is of interest, not only for its content. There are manuscripts, works of such famous medieval scholars as Abu Rayhan Biruni, Abu Ali ibn Sina, Mirza Ulugh, representatives of his school. Many of these works have not yet been translated and put into academic circulation. From this point of view, our foundation is still waiting for its researchers, but each book is a manuscript and one can still consider it as an example of medieval book art because they are richly decorated in a traditional Oriental style, abundantly illustrated in the subject. Therefore, I believe that there are a lot of people who are interested in the sources of our fund.
Богато оформлены в традиционном восточном стиле, богато иллюстрированы по своей тематике. Поэтому, я думаю, еще найдутся очень много интересующихся источниками нашего фонда.
The name of the great Khwarizm encyclopedia scientist, Abu Rayhan Al-Biruni, who has been honored by the Institute since 1957, has not been chosen by chance either. The medieval thinker, who lived at the turn of the 10th and 11th centuries, left many magnificent scientific works on various branches of knowledge. These are the remaining science of past centuries and mineralogy and the incomparable descriptions of the Indias. In the following centuries, his books diligently corresponded throughout the Orient. The oldest of Biruni manuscripts in the Institute's collection is the Persian version of his astronomical work, the Book of Reasoning for Fundamentals of the Science of the Stars, At-Tafkham, inventory number 3423, dated 1261 to 1262, and equipped with carefully completed drawings, tables, and maps. The manuscript is written in Naskh style on thick light brown Oriental paper. In the history of world civilization, next to each other, as if by two great lumps of knowledge, works of our two famous fellow countrymen, geniuses of the Muslim Middle Ages, rise. These are Abu Rayhan Biruni and Abu Ali ibn Sina. A native of Bukhara, Ibn Sina, who is named Avicenna in Europe, is known to be a contemporary and friend of Abu Rayhan Biruni. In the collection of the Institute, one can get acquainted, for example, with documents such as the messages of Ibn Sina addressed to Biruni, inventory number 2385. Ibn Sina left behind to the descendants a legacy in many fields of science and culture. These are original treatises on philosophy and magnificent verses. What do you have in return for the eyes and curly or beauty? Once this is rose, two daffodils, and thirdly famous ambergris. The seeker of your lips has come to know three states of mind: dishonor, weakness, madness, or beauty. However, in our eyes, he is, above all, a brilliant doctor. one of the founders of contemporary medicine. His main multi-volume work, Kitab al-Qanun fi Tib, has been copied thousands of times over the past centuries in different countries and translated into many languages. Please deliver this book to my student Jurjani, and be careful here. Between the lines, a new chapter of my canon is written. It's widely published even nowadays. The Library of Institute contains 7 old canon lists, the oldest of which was prepared in 1309. This manuscript in binding of a later origin and with a number of defects was acquired by the Institute relatively recently, in 1969 in the city of Asaka near Andijan. It has to be noted that the various handwritten versions of the same book, made once in different places and at different times, without exception, are of great interest to science, since sometimes they reveal the original author's text. After all, people tend to make mistakes, and over the many centuries of the existence of a work, there have been numerous discrepancies, and indeed, simple deplorable mistakes. Only careful comparison of all surviving lists help to establish the truth. Only careful comparison of all surviving lists helps to establish the truth. This is especially important in the study of manuscripts of natural scientific content. From this point of view, real adornment of the Institute's manuscript collection is Zigi Goragani, the result of many years of work by the great astronomer of the Middle Ages, Mirza Ulugh, the beloved grandson of Amir Timur, who ruled the Central Asian possessions of the Timurids from Samarkand for 40 years, became famous as an astronomer and at the head of a whole group of scholars, compiled his stellar astronomical tables of outstanding accuracy, which then played an important role as a practical tool for navigators of the great epoch geographical discoveries. Among the 4 ancient lists of star tables of Mirza Ulugh stored in the collection of the Institute, manuscript inventory number 2214 was written 6 centuries ago in small calligraphic handwriting Naskh on Indian paper by the hand of astronomer Ali Kushchi, the closest associate of Mirza Ulugh. This, in essence, was tantamount to an autograph, as a number of researchers rightly believe that this manuscript was edited by the author himself. The manuscript begins with paper. The best samples of paper were produced in Samarkand. Samarkand paper was famous throughout the Islamic world. This paper was famous throughout the Arab world, throughout the Muslim world. Firstly, it wasn't destroyed by insects. It was very strong and stable paper, and secondly, ink spread out and it was possible to write even with ink of various quality. And it easily accepted different types of ink on prima, what they wrote in gold or painting in gold. Miniature in Herat, for instance. The prominent Muslim miniaturist Begzad preferred to write his miniatures on Samarkand paper or on Chinese silk paper. Handwritten traditions generally have begun with paper. The same success, well, perhaps not of such great quality, was the paper from Bukhara. Bukharian paper is also very thick. It also received ink quite well, and so forth. It was customary to illustrate many works of medieval authors with art miniatures, which in the Middle Ages received the name of illumination. In the art of illuminating manuscripts, Eastern artists of the 15th century achieved particularly great success. This time today is deservedly called the era of Timurid Renaissance. Among the geniuses of art of that period, the works of the Herat artist Kemaluddin Behzad enjoys worldwide fame. His illustrations in books were highly valued hundreds of years ago. Numerous followers of Behzad, who is called Raphael of the Orient, developed and perfected the art of book miniature decorating manuscripts with skillfully executed color miniature paintings. They bring to us the very spirit of an era whose active contemporary was the great poet Alisher Navai. It was then that the artistic basis of a special book style was born, which then inspired Oriental painters for centuries. In the theatre of modern Uzbekistan in the 16th to 17th centuries, whole schools of Bukhara and Samarkand miniaturists worked intensively, which preserved and developed the traditions of Kamaluddin Behzad. One can specify many examples of this, focusing on manuscripts from the library of the Institute. A great example, for instance, is a wonderful copy of the Book of Victories, Zafarname, the world-famous work of Sharaf ad-Din Ali Yazdi, Timurid historian from the city of Yazd, detailing the rule of Amir Timur, was rewritten in Samarkand in the 16th century and provided with finely executed miniatures of local artists. The battle scenes and images of the majlises of Amir Timur miraculously transport the reader to the colorful world of the heroic era of the creation of the great Timurid Empire. The abundance of the manuscripts is especially noticeable when one gets acquainted with the manuscripts of literary works of poets venerated by the people, especially Alisher Navai. So that people in the country will be rich, happy. It's essential that the sovereign will be fair, that people prosper, that nation blooms, and the law is just and yoke is not allowed. In the immediate vicinity of the founder of Uzbek classical literature, a statesman and a humanist were outstanding writers, book artists and calligraphers. Their works reached us, and one can get to know them in the collection of the Institute. Numerous lists of Alisher Navai's poems, Hamsa, including the earliest ones, Language of the Birds, Anthology, Nazm al-Jawahir, 40 hadiths, and in particular his collection of poems, Divans, reveal to us all the richness of the picturesque and calligraphic design of medieval manuscripts. There, friend of Navai, the incomparable master of calligraphy, Sultan Ali Mashhadi, shone with his mastery. We have a wonderful collection, which we arbitrarily call Navai album, in other words, Majmuai Murasala, which means a collection of messages. Here are collected correspondence carried out between Alisher Navai and Abdurrahman Jami and Haji Akhrar. Haji Akhrar and Abdurrahman Jami addressed to Alisher Navai about various issues with respect to the life of the common people. Alisher Navai preserved all these letters, gave the form to such a volume, and I can state that it's thanks to this binding that these letters have survived to the present day.
И опять-таки я могу сказать, что именно благодаря этому переплету вот эти вот письма в целости и сохранности дошли до наших дней.
It has to be noted that among the manuscripts stored in the collection of the Institute, we meet almost all the great classics of Muslim literature of the Middle Ages, as well as many little-known authors whose contribution to world literature remains to be determined.
Bizning institutimiz fondida 5000 ga yaqin adabiyotga oid qo'lyozmalar saqlanadi.
Classical literature of the East is rich in philosophy and profound artistic ideas created in many languages, and all of them present about 5,000 manuscripts stored in the Institute. The time of their creation covers the period from the 7th to the 20th century. For instance, manuscript inventory number 1809 is the oldest composition in the Turkic language, Tatru Bilik by Yusuf Khashaji Balasuguni. Of the famous works on philology, we can mention the full-language dictionary of Mahmud Zamakhshari relating to the core science of Muqaddimat al-Adab. All kinds of literary works cultivating those times are widely represented in the collection. Interestingly, among the manuscripts we find poetry collections created by the crown monarchs. For example, by Shah of Iran, Ismail Safavi, Turkish Sultan Suleiman, as well as by the rulers of the Uzbek Khanates. Among them, Khan of Kokand, Muhammad Ali, and Khan of Khiva, Muhammad Rahim II, who wrote under pen name Feruz, acquired great fame. They tried to revive the literary traditions of the era of the great Alisher Navoiy.
Mo'g'ul tilidagi tarjimasini bergan. Bundan tashqari bu faqat lug'aviy ma'nosini bermagan, uni ince, ichki ma'nolari, qirralarini ham, kontekstdagi uning qirralari, jilolarini ham mana shu asarida ma'nolarini yoritib bergan. Bu noyob qo'lyozmalarimizdan biri sanaladi.
The scientific and artistic value of the library is not measurable. The works created and written in many Oriental languages over 10 centuries cover almost all branches of medieval science and culture and are the most valuable sources in the study of the past. At the same time, many of them are unique both in terms of content and in relation to the artistic performance. There are rare autographs that are not found in other manuscript repositories of the world. Many copies of the manuscripts have reached us in a damaged form. Time didn't spare some of them.
Al-Biruni nomidagi Sharqshunoslik institutining
The most important unit of the institute is the restoration laboratory, where documents and manuscript damaged by the time are restored. The methods for restoring handwritten texts, lithographs, and documents differ from each other. Quite often, the initial and final pages of the book blocks are damaged. Laboratory personnel seek the full restoration of each restored manuscript by using experience and methods of foreign experts in this field.
o'z holatiga keltirib, ulardan qayta foydalanish holatigacha bo'lgan proses hammasi mana shu restavratsion laboratoriyada amalga oshiriladi.
Significant part of the books collected by the library relates to Muslim religious sciences. The collection of Qurans is plentiful, among which many copies are distinguished by high artistic merits of performance. For example, Quran, inventory number 2169, with richly decorated binding of silver and colored animal and a luxurious frontispiece. Among the various collections of stories about the Prophet, Hadith, we know the oldest copy in the world, transcribed in 955 on dark paper without glossing by a certain calligrapher, Abu Ali al-Hasan ibn Muhammad ibn Ahmad, rare phrases in Hadiths by al-Qarawi.
Тут представлены рукописи принадлежат величайшему.
The manuscripts presented here belong to our greatest compatriot, Burhan al-Din al-Margiani. He is known throughout the Muslim world and not only in the Muslim world. And we are proud that the oldest lists of the composition of world-famous Al-Hidayah are stored in our Tashkent fund. This list was rewritten in Egypt. Another list of the same Al-Hidayah. It was rewritten in northern India, although the date is not indicated here. But based on calligraphic features, we can conclude that it was rewritten no later than in the 16th century. I believe that this attests to the attention paid to this composition, because it was not just a literary work. It had practical significance in everyday life, while regulating the legal norms of Muslim society.
Этому сочинению, потому что оно не просто как литературное произведение, оно имело практическое значение при повседневной жизни, при регулировании правовых норм мусульманского общества.
У меня вот под рукой сейчас ярлык
At the moment, I have at hand a yarlik or a letter of grant of Khan of Hiva, Rahim Quli, addressed to the descendants of Shah Qasim Ata, who himself was descendant of the famous Mir Arab. It means that this document was provided regarding the provision of Tarkhan, and naturally regarding the exemption of these people from all customs and state fees. And almost all of these documents are executed in such a beautiful manner. It's this fact that makes our foundation a special repository of the world manuscripts, among the others.
Более 100 единиц, и практически все эти документы оформлены таким вот прекрасным образом. Именно этот факт делает наш фонд особенным среди остальных рукописных хранилищ мира.
The Institute's funds are very splendid in manuscripts in fiqh, law and Sufi writings. About 2,000 manuscripts of the library belong to Sufi teachings. Especially rich are the collections of the lives of the sheikhs of the order of Naqshbandiya. Special area of Oriental book art is the calligraphic execution of manuscripts. The collection of the Institute also contains specific items that were used by famous and unknown katib, calligraphers. These are features of qalama, pencil cases qalamdon, special supports for books, laf, original inkwells. On the pages of books from the collection of the Institute, there are almost all the handwritings and styles of Arabic writing, and there are more than 30 of them.
Арабский шрифт, он обладает удивительными свойствами.
The Arabic letters have amazing properties. It's very flexible, its spelling lines are clearly divided into horizontal and vertical. The calligraphers took full advantage of these properties, and about 120 types of handwriting appeared in the Muslim Orient. And each of these variations had its own local sub-variations. For instance, Bukharian Nastaliq, Heratian Nastaliq, Iranian Nastaliq or Shiraz Nastaliq, and so forth. It was very cursive, but retained its quality. The handwriting of Kufi dominated until the 13th century. It's difficult to read, but nevertheless it's an inscription. It's Quranic, verses of famous poets. It's the wisdom of centuries, after all. For the people of that time and for the artist himself, this was of immense importance. It's a state of mind at the time of correspondence. As for some kind of manuscript, then the hand must not flinch. The hand, as Ali Mashhadi, a famous calligrapher, author of this treatise, writes, must be led by Allah.
Рукою, как пишет Али Машхади, такой знаменитый каллиграф, автор вот этого трактата для каллиграфов, он пишет: «Руку твою должен вести Аллах».
The book collection of the Institute is constantly growing, and some parts of the collection, especially documents, are not well understood.
Постановление президента Республики Узбекистан Шавкат Миромоновича Мирзияева.
The resolution of President of the Republic of Uzbekistan, Shavkat Miromonovich Mirziyoyev, as of May 24, 2017, in measures to further improve the preservation and hence the distribution of manuscripts, became an important historical document in the activities of the Institute. Inasmuch as this document is, according to this presidential decree, the Institute of a leading research center in Uzbekistan, it coordinates activities within the Institute itself and also coordinates other organizations of Oriental manuscript funds. Another important point of this decision is that new opportunities are opening up for replenishing the Institute's fund by acquiring manuscripts kept by population. International cooperation, mutual effort of various scholars of the world will make it possible for this heritage to become the property of all humankind. On the other hand, it has an educational character. As far as the young people who grow up, they ought to know the history, legacy of their ancestors. And in this regard, the work carried out for the purposes of this institute has both academic and practical significance. It will serve to educate the younger generation in the spirit of the traditions of their ancestors.
В этом плане работа, которая ведется в стенах этого института, имеет и научное значение, и практическое значение. Послужит воспитанию подрастающего поколения в духе традициям своих предков.
There is no doubt that the book Cave of Aladdin in Tashkent is fraught with many future discoveries.